For a closer look at the political developments in Egypt, we turn to Rebecca Abou-Chedid. She is a fellow at the Truman National Security Project, and I asked her whether the proposed appointment of Mohammed el-Baradei as interim prime minister will be a way to quickly stabilize the country.
I think that's the attempt, and I think it's to try to put a message to the people in the streets that their demands are being heard. Baradei is a very popular figure and a popular leader in that movement, and he's the head of the National Salvation Front. What I think is also important, though, is that there is another set of protesters right on the streets right now, and it needs to be clear to all Egyptians that the government's going to be working to represent all of them. And so there needs to be a path forward that brings them to new elections, but that also includes the Brotherhood, because they're an important part of Egyptian society.
There are some criticisms of el-Baradei about his leadership and the fact that maybe he didn't want to lead at one point.
You know, when Baradei stepped away from the presidential campaign, he was actually pointing a lot of flaws that I think brought us to where we are today, which is it was a flawed kind of system that they were using, in the sense that you had the first round of elections, and if someone didn't get to 51, you had a runoff. And in that kind of scenario, you actually had more people voting for secular candidates than Brotherhood, but the two candidates that made it past the runoff were the former Prime Minister under Mubarak and the Brotherhood candidate. And so for a vast majority of Egyptians, there really was almost no choice for people who had been out in the streets in 2011 looking for real change. Those two candidates didn't really represent that. And I think that that was a lot of the Baradei criticism while he was running for president. And another criticism was that this is not really a revolution. A revolution is to fundamentally remake the state, and rushing straight from Tahrir Square in 2011 straight to elections in many ways left some of the most fundamental questions that the revolution raised very much unanswered.
I want to get your thoughts on the Brotherhood and the events taking place in Nasser City and the masses of people that have gathered there.
You know, I know that there's been violence. I know there's been violence by the army, and that needs to end. And the Brotherhood, there's been violence by the Brotherhood. There's reports of children being thrown off buildings in Alexandria. And I really think that this is a moment where Egyptians this is going to be a turning point for the modern Egyptian state, and really violence can't be any part of it. I think there's a right for all Egyptians to peaceful protest, and I can understand why the Brotherhood is very angry right now. But it's also a good opportunity in terms of self-reflection. This was their first chance to govern, and they did a very bad job at it. And so I think that rather than simply take the message that they've been deposed, they also need to take a little bit of time for self-reflection and ask themselves why millions of Egyptians came out into the street against their rule.
All right, Rebecca Abou-Chedid, we appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the show.